All right, so you're on record.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Announcement is being made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that it is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 Exec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Nora, please call the roll.
Mr. DeDeach.
Here.
Mr. Dinsmore.
Here.
Mayor Desai.
Here.
Mr. DiPiero. Mr. DiPiero.
Michael?
Here.
Councilwoman Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Here.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Mr. Patel.
Here.
Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Here. Mr. Von Aiken.
Here.
We also have our board attorney, Mr. Wenzel.
Here. Okay. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is open to the general public. With that being said, are there any members of the general public that would like to introduce anything that is not on our agenda for this evening? All right, seeing none, I will close the public portion and move on to our agenda. Mr. Wenzel, I believe we have a swearing in.
Yeah. How these things work. That's correct, Chairman. So if Mr. Patel could stand up, please?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I can't tell which way you work. Okay. Right hand. Go. I state your name.
Neerav Patel,
Okay. Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
and that I will bear true faith
I bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same
to the same,
and to the governments established
to the government established
in the United States
in the United States
and in this state
and in this state
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Wait, there's more. I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will impartially
that I will impartially
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office
of the office
of Planning Board Member
of Planning Board Member
according to the best of my ability.
according to best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're sworn in.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Nora, you need him to sign both these, right?
Just the nicer paper, the yellow one,
The fancy one?
the fancy one.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Patel.
If you just-
Sure. All right.
Yeah,
Okay, moving on with our agenda, we have a presentation on the housing element and fair share planning amendment and ordinance amendment. If you wouldn't mind, please introducing yourself to the board. Some of us are newer.
Absolutely, and including with that, I would turn to your board attorney for probably swearing myself in, because this will be a public hearing for the purposes of the amendment.
Thank you.
One second. Trying to do two things at once, so.
No worries.
All right. Ed? Do you swear affirm and tell the truth for this planning board tonight?
I do.
All right, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Certainly. The name is Edward Snikus. It's Snieckus.
All right, Mr. Snikus, you're employed with Burgess and Associates,
That's correct.
and that's the township retained planning firm to assist the township with regard to its affordable housing obligations,
That is
correct? And you've been the point person with regard to the development of the affordable housing plans and response to the fourth round, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and now you're back here today, and kind of setting you up and then winding it so you can go, that you're here today on an amendment to that plan. So those members of the planning board who were not here back in, I think it was June of 2025, the original housing plan for the fourth round, and Ed will be more eloquent at this than I am, but there was an original housing plan that was approved back in June per the amended Fair Housing Act that had to be done. Remember, there's these very strict timelines these things have to occur within. So that original housing plan needed to be approved in that time frame. Afterwards, what happens is that plan has the opportunity to be challenged. Parsippany had several challenges, both from Fair Share Housing Center and from interested developers of various parcels. What has happened since that time is there's been a resolution of those challenges, which now brings us here today. Because of the resolution of those challenges, the original plan, which was approved back in June, needs some, my word, tweaking to match up with the resolved challenges. So that's what Ed is here tonight, not to show you a brand new plan. This is the plan, just a plan with the amendments in line with the current consent order. So, with that, Ed, you want to advise the board where, want to fill in those gaps?
Certainly, and also in an effort to introduce myself, I'm a licensed professional planner and a licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey. And I've been having the privilege to prepare your housing element and fair share plan since the third round. So I've been doing this for a little bit of time, familiar with the township and many of the nuances, I guess, associated with how the plans were developed and put forth. But those of you on the board that may have heard from me last June with regard to the housing element fair share plan, I do want to let the new board members know, the mayor as well as others, of how this goes about. Where we are right now is, as Mr. Wenzel just mentioned, we're amending the housing element and fair share plan. What that plan is actually an element of the master plan. The master plan, based upon the municipal land use law, is the responsibility of this board, the planning board of Township of
Can I
Parsippany.
interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
Mike DePiero.
Thank you, Mike. Hello?
Hi. The document I have that I've been using is the housing element and fair share plan dated June 12th, 2025 from Burgess. And you're talking about it June 25th. Was there a document after the one I have for June 12th?
Yeah, Mike, if you remember, we had the initial document on June 12th, 2025. That was the document that was reviewed with the board on the 25th of June. And we had to have it on file 10 days prior to, so that's why it's June 12th of 2025. Since that time, if you remember, there was an errata sheet that we had adopted at the same time of that document. And in that document, we had just adjusted certain things that were typos in the document due to the compressed time frame. We had to prepare that document as well. So that's probably why you're seeing the June 12th.
The same document with some little changes?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, thank you.
But the references to the sheet numbers in my latest amendment should correlate.
Good, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So just also for the new board members, this becomes a master plan element, and that's why tonight we had to have the public hearing. Because whenever you're adopting or amending a housing element fair share plan or a component of your master plan, you're required to have a public hearing. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, we had to have this document on file 10 days prior to the hearing. Also do a public notice, which I wanted to mention for the record, that we properly noticed for tonight's meeting, 10 days prior to the meeting. So in accordance with the statutory requirements, I wanted to mention that. In addition to that, what we had on file, in an effort to try to be very succinct and to the point, is we prepared a memorandum that outlines the overall amendments. And as was just mentioned by the board member a moment ago, the last amendment was adopted on June 25th, 2025. So essentially what we're doing, as was mentioned by Mr. Wenzel, is we're going to amend that document. I'd like to walk the board through the actual amendments, and we tried to make it a very descriptive means, but I'd like to identify these page numbers and things of that nature that are relative to the amendments. And just lastly, one last thing to mention was, as was mentioned by Mr. Wenzel, is that we are under a very statutory imposed timeline. We have till March 15th to have this housing element and fair share plan amended. And that's why we've scheduled tonight's meeting, in order for us to amend that document. In addition, the governing body, the mayor and council, have also introduced several ordinances that are related to this housing element fair share plan, also tied to that same March 15th deadline. I'll be touching on those in a moment, just because first we'll be talking about the element of the master plan, and then we'll be talking about those ordinances that have been referred to you. And the reason why they're referred to you is because since you are involved in drafting of the master plan and effectively the housing element fair share plan, the municipal land use law requires that those ordinances be referred to this board for review of what's called consistency. Actually, the language talks about inconsistency. Are there any inconsistencies with the land use plan or the master plan? And by us reviewing the amendments first and hopefully getting to an adoption this evening, we have the ability to then look at those ordinances and opine on whether or not they're consistent with the intentions of the housing element fair share plan. So I'll talk about that in a moment, but first my testimony will be about the amendments. Sorry about the long-winded introduction, but it gives everybody at least an outline of what we're going through. So I'm just referring to a memorandum we prepared of February 16th, 2026, where I've identified in this document the various pages and sort of repeated items that were, I thought, relative for at least the new board members that may not have seen the document before, but also it sort of gives you the sections and the logic behind some of the changes. So I'm turning the page 2, and I wanted to identify that we just repeated the executive summary that's involved in the document, starts on page 8, and that in table 1 under the affordable housing obligation, I just wanted to point out for this board, under the category of fourth round obligation, we have an obligation of 496 units, and this is for the fourth round. And just to kind of give the board what that means and to the public, the fourth round is for the next 10 years. We went through the third round cycle, which was from 1999 through 2015. And then we had what's called immunity, because we had a housing element and fair share plan adopted from 2015, effectively 2020 by the time all that settled out, to 2025, June 30th of 2025. We had immunity from any what's called developers remedy lawsuits, where someone can come in and say that we did not have we did not satisfy our constitutional obligation for affordable housing. Since that June 30th, 2025 to now, being that we're in 2026, we are under a statutory time period that allows us to have coverage from immunity, but only if we were to be moving forward with this plan, which we have been, has been identified for the board. So that number of 496 was established through a process that we went through with the state Department of Community Affairs as a result of the Fair Housing Act. And originally that number was supposed to be 553, but it actually became 496 because we found certain errors in the calculations that the state had. So I just wanted you to know that the township has been diligent in trying to reduce the number as much as we could. Going further down, the prior round obligation on the next page, that is essentially the same as how we've addressed it in the prior fourth round plan. And then also the third round obligation, which was that time period between 1999 and 2025, which starts on page 4, that has some minor changes to it. And I've tried to consistently, but I think some of it didn't come through consistently, but I'll talk about it for the record tonight, of what we actually changed. But in the third round, we did in fact seek what's called a vacant land adjustment. Again, we had a 1,314 unit obligation back in the third round. But you're able to, through the Fair Housing Act, in a municipality that may be developed or built out to a condition, adjust that number downward. And the way you adjust that number downward is by seeking what's called a vacant land adjustment. As we may think, well, we still have some vacant land if you think about it, but we are able to exclude lands that are restricted by floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes, highlands, certain highlands protections. So we at the third round back in 2015 to 2020 sought that adjustment and reduced it down to 845. Still a substantial number, but we were able to get that number reduced down to 845. What happens in the fourth round and any other future round is you're required to look back. And the reason for it is to see if any programs did not come to fruition that you had planned for in the third round. to see if you had to make adjustments to them. And as Mr. Wenzel mentioned a moment ago, is that when we submitted our June 25th plan to the program, which is called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, which is the new program that's been established by the state for review, they also had a period by which they would receive objectors to your plan if they disagreed with certain things or wanted to be included in the plan. As was mentioned, we received objections from what's called Fair Housing Center. The Fair Housing Center is a non-for-profit agency that's in the state that has been notoriously involved in affordable housing matters throughout the state. Just for reference, they actually were involved in litigating affordable housing plans to the tune of, I believe, over 500 of the municipalities in the state. So you can see that they were substantially involved. It wasn't just Parsippany. It was almost all plans that were submitted. And part of their objection was they wanted to see how we were addressing the third round plan, that prior round plan. And that's one of the things that we had to deal with when they came to object to the plan. So I wanted to point that out to the board of why we had to go back through that third round plan. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Just two questions. So you're saying that this FSHC is challenging all over the state, not just Parsippany? So they've done this in multiple towns, we're not just the only one?
That is correct.
All right. And then the 496,
Mhm.
we have 10 years to get 496 built or just approved?
What your obligation is as a township is to actually zone for these properties. And the properties have all come to the municipalities stating that they're willing and able to be developed. They have rights to the properties. They are willing to do it. They showed a concept plan, and that's how we built our housing plan around those concept plans. And the reason why we had to was because we had such a need, and we had to find ways of addressing that need because these properties were all identified as, I won't call them stranded assets, but assets that are in a state where they needed to transition to something else. Most of them, if not all of them, were existing development. So that's how we had to address it, unfortunately. We couldn't seek vacant land adjustment further from that number because all these properties became available. We had more than actually the 7 that are included in the plan. Yes.
Question. So when they wanted to come back and look at our third round, why would they do that now? I think I might have even asked you this before, but it boggles my mind. Why would they do that now when we had the immunity, when we did our best?
Right.
I mean, we got the approval that we were
Correct.
done.
You put the zoning in place, you did what you were
Yes,
supposed to do,
yeah.
right?
Why would they come back to?
What happens is that they look at it and they say, well, is this a realistic site that would be developed so that we would meet that third round requirement? What had happened was, and I'll point to this in a moment, the Westmount Plaza, if you look at table 3 on this page, you'll see that it has some strike throughs through it, and it's in red text. Hopefully you all have the colored version. That Westmount Plaza is the former Kmart
Oh, that's
location.
right.
And that was supposed to move forward to another mixed-use affordable housing inclusionary project with also market rate developments. Unfortunately, that developer did not move in that direction. I don't know exactly the reason why for the official record, but what was brought out by Fair Share was, look, you have a requirement of 845. You're not meeting all your 845 by this property being zoned such. But when we were involved in that process, that property still represented, at least to me as a planner, as a mixed-use project seems to make some sense because you have commercial, you have the park and ride facility that's there, so you have the ability to get mass transit back and forth to that location. In addition, when you look at the 845, there is actually what's called unmet need. And I apologize for all these phrases and terms. They tend to confuse easily me at times. And I've been looking at this for entirely too much time. But we have a unmet need of 634 units of unmet need in that prior round. But we were able to apply certain credits to that need in order to bring it down. But at the same time, what Fair Share is looking at is, well, you had this prior round need, that was a need defined in that prior round, but this project did not move forward. It didn't even make an application before the board. So therefore, that's why it became a suspect. What was fortunate was we were working with the Park Lanadex project, the redevelopment area, and that project was able to fill that hole that we had in the prior plan. So you'll see that I've adjusted numbers from that project to help fill that gap. So we were able to say, look, okay, we understand in order to settle a fair share, they were like, we're not going to settle unless you figure something out. Because this was 63 units of credit plus bonuses that we had applied in that prior round. So they said, look, you got to figure something out. I said, listen, Parsippany's done a yeoman's job in addressing 845 units. We need to find a way to make this work. At the same time, I knew that Park Realty was looking to expand upon that redevelopment plan. And that seemed to make sense to fill that gap. So we were able to move the numbers around to fill that gap. Hopefully that explains the matter. Thank you. But that also helps to explain what we changed in the third round. So there you go. All right, so that's the dialogue for the third round. Now moving to what's called the fourth round obligation, which starts in June 30th of 2035, goes on to 2025, sorry, goes on to June 30th of 2035, which is hard for me to say. So we made certain adjustments to some of the text that you'll see here, just to help with clarification of the text. I won't bother going through all that detail, but at the same time, what we also noted in the fourth round was we did get fair shares agreement that, look, we're affirmatively addressing our 496 units. But if you remember, we had additional unmet need from that third round. And because they saw that certain projects were not moving forward in the third round, plus, I hope this doesn't sound complicated, we were moving credits from Park Realty's redevelopment into filling the holes for the third round, as well as helping us to cover the fourth round. That removed them from some of the unmet need mechanisms that we had for the third round. You still have to put in affirmative zoning for the RDP for the 845. Plus, we had to also implement zoning to cover the unmet need, a portion of the unmet need from the third round. So since we moved some credits for Park Realty out of that third round mechanism into the fourth round, we had to replace some of the gap of unmet need that was established from that third round. And one of the objectors, 7 Century Road, which was a development that was part of the original interested parties in our housing plan. There were over 16 interested parties in our housing plan. We chose 7 of those interested parties because at that time, from a planning perspective, it made sense due to the distribution, the types of developments that they were, the proximity to residential single-family homes, things of that nature. That's how we made those decisions. And so in order to fill that gap, 7 Century Road was interested, if you recall, some of the members may remember this, is that part of that property was a overlay zone for warehousing because the office building was vacant at the time. So instead of that development type that was being proposed there, they were interested in doing residential. And if you know where that property is located, it's actually located on the fringe of a residential area, a single-family home, into the office development on Century Drive. Sorry, I said road before, Century Drive. And what happened was they were interested in doing townhouses there, stacked townhouses and some regular townhouses. And so we looked at that and said, you know what, that makes a good transitional use at that location instead of warehousing at that location. And as I understand it, that was also in favor by neighbors as well at that location. So in order to fill the gap for the park being moved around, those credits being moved around, we chose to put the 7th Century into that category of unmet need for that third round. And what that helped to do was to address that gap. So that's what's being proposed in the fourth round plan. Hopefully, I can always explain that in another way if you need it, but that sort of explains how we move certain things to address unmet need, but also reach settlement with one of the objectors to the Housing Element Fair Share Plan. When we met with the court program judge involved in this matter, as well as what's called their court-approved adjudicator, which is a professional planner that's hired by the court, that is supposed to be someone who is objectively looking at the objectors and the township and saying, okay, how can we come to a meeting of the minds? And also, is the township meeting their fair share obligation and doing really what they can to address their need? What the court adjudicator realized very quickly, and I think they did make, the adjudicator was present at a council meeting last year, is recognize that, you know what? Parsippany doesn't have to address all the objectors, because there was even more objectors than just 7th Century. They've addressed their entire 496, which was their fourth round need, plus they've moved credits around and showed a good faith effort in getting projects approved, developed, moved along. So they said, look, to address this gap in the unmet need, Fair Share Housing Center, wouldn't you come along if in fact we included 7th Century Drive? And they did. I can divulge this now to you because we're out of mediation. We reached this agreement. And that's how the mediation agreement was drafted, from that agreement. And so that's what brings us here today and makes these changes to the housing element fair share plan. Just for some other information relative to the housing plan, I'm now on page 8. You can see that introduction, section 1 doesn't change, section 2 of the housing element doesn't change, section 3 gets some minor changes as it relates to, on the second to last paragraph. I'm at the bottom of that paragraph. If you see that it says these corrections altered the township's prospective need from 553 to 496 affordable units, there was a typo in there before I fixed. It was actually 196, became 496, just so you're aware. We did also, across the board, made changes to what's called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, which is the official organization that we submitted information to. We use the acronym of AHDRP in the document. I'm now on page 9. There really isn't any changes to this section, but we're looking at section 3.3 on this page. Turning to page 10, we noted some minor changes at the bottom of the document. The last paragraph says the township has determined that 7 locations containing existing development represent new development or a changed circumstance requiring the 4th round RDP obligation. That's what I just explained to the board. I'm now changing to pages 11, going on to page 13. This is really, again, one of the more substantive things I mentioned to the board. In this section, we go through what's called site suitability analyses, and we identified the Park Builders, AKA Lanadex project that was previously approved. We didn't at the time, because we submitted this back in June, know just yet that the redevelopment plan was going to be adopted or amended for the park project. So we had to recognize that in the text of the Park Builders project. We wanted to put that in the housing element fair share plan. So that's what you'll see on page 13, as well as page 14 of this memorandum, those 2 adjustments to the redevelopment plan. 15 stays the same, 16 as well, 17 stays the same, 18 as well, 19 stays the same, and then 20 stays the same. 21 as well stays the same, sorry for all this. 22, 23, 24, up to 25. And I just wanted to, I repeated those sections in case there was new board members reading this for the first time, they can kind of read along with the section completes. So you weren't just picking and choosing what you're seeing. On page 25, we talk about revisions on page 63 of the report, section 4.3 prior round components. We identified just that the table is being, the table number is being changed on this. Page 26, the next page, sorry, section 4.4 third round components. This is where, again, we're going to be striking out Westmount Plaza because now this becomes one of those gaps. And we're adding to the Park Lanadex project because it's being moved to the unmet need component. We still kept, and I think I didn't mention this before, I mentioned the Westmount Plaza project. Yeah, I think I did. Because it was so appropriately located and had a park and ride facility, we're maintaining it as unmet need. And Fair Share appreciated that and also gave that credit in their considerations for approving the plan amendments. Going on to page 28. Westmount Plaza, here's where we just define how Westmount Plaza has been moved to the unmet need category because of its uncertainty of when it might move forward. We couldn't prove that that was going to be a development that was going to occur in the next 10 years, nor was the developer. So that was where we had to be. On page 29, again, getting to a little bit more of the substantive things, overlay zoning, what we're talking about, the overlay zones in the third round plan. We identified specifically the language there. We did strike out one of the paragraphs as it relates to the park project because we made modifications to the park project. Going on to page 30, we did note 2 overlay zones that did not move forward, and Fair Share was also saying, you know what, those 2 projects may not be contributing to your housing plan. So everyone, including the adjudicator, recognized that the overlay 1 and overlay 2 zones, which are both located in the North Beverwick Road corridor area, did not represent sites that were probably not going to move forward in the next 10 years. So those 2 sites are actually being recommended to be removed. We're not officially removing them just yet. That should be another governing body action after this plan gets adopted. Only because of the sake of time, we didn't actually adopt an amendment yet, removing those 2 zones. But they have existing zoning on them.
If we did get to the point where they were removed, would we also then at that point remove the overlay zones that were applied to
Yes.
those properties?
That's what I'm saying, yes. Overlay zone 3, this is where we've now added the, excuse me, let me just make sure if this is the case. Yes, overlay 3 would be now covering, okay, excuse me. I did make note that the overlay 3 zone is being changed by a redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan now applies to that overlay 3 zone, so therefore that's the zoning mechanism that's implementing the change in their zoning. Proposed overlay 8A, that's where I just mentioned to you on 7th Century Drive, the KF Schoolhouse LLC is requesting that overlay zoning. I will note that that zone, since we introduced that ordinance, and I'll talk about the ordinances in a moment, they have requested some minor adjustments to some of their setback criteria. I'll be discussing that with the governing body tomorrow at the mayor and council meeting when we get to the public hearing on that. But the spirit of the ordinance is still the same. It's really minor setback, 5-foot changes, things of that nature, that when they actually saw the ordinance, and I was hoping they were going to see the ordinance ahead of time, they got back to us and I said, you know what, I got to deal with that in a public hearing. So that's where I'll be dealing with that public hearing. Going now to page 31 of the report. This is where we've now made certain adjustments to the overlay zones that are addressing unmet need that I mentioned a moment ago. Really turning the page now, 32, 33, really going to 34. On page 34, this talks again about the 4th round components in that document, where on 1 Upper Pond Road, we had a typo for the block and lot numbers. We just had to correct that typo on that page. Going now to page 37, I'll let you catch up to me on that page.
Excuse me, where is the typo?
Yes, it was under the 1 Upper Pond Road. It was listed as block 130. It shows as block 136 right now.
Uh-huh.
It was previously lot, I believe it was shown as block 13, but it's corrected as block 136. You follow that, Mayor?
Okay,
You okay?
I'm good.
Okay. So now I'm turning to page 37. On page 37, on section 4.6, item number 7, UHAC requirements. This is the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls document that recently was amended by the state. As we're all writing these housing plans, and I'm kind of chuckling only because it seems insane to be doing this at the same time we're trying to get court-approved documents done. So we had to recognize that change and wanted to identify that for the board. And you'll hear from me in a moment when I talk about the amendments that have been introduced of why the affordable housing ordinances are being amended as well, because the UHAC regulations are being adjusted, as well as the Fair Housing Act to change certain things as well. So that was the only change on that page. The next page, page 38, consistency with state initiatives, all of that is the same. Going on to page 39. 4.8, section 4.8 at the bottom, identifies requests not included. This is a requirement of the Fair Housing Act, that you identify anybody who may have tried to be included in the plan, but was excluded. Previously, 7 Century Drive tried to be part of the fourth round plan when we constituted it back in June. But of course, they're now included as unmet need, so therefore I had to take them out of this section. That's really the technical change that was being done there. Sorry for all this long-winded stuff, but on page 41, I'm trying to skip
These
ahead.
ones on page 40 and 41, they applied and you guys said no.
That's
Not
correct.
the best spot. Okay, if they come back and still want to build, they can, right?
They can still
They're just not
come
part of the
back,
plan.
but they would have to seek a use variance.
But they still have to be required to put in affordable housing 20%?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Across the board, we have now, in our affordable housing ordinance,
You
that
know we
we're
didn't
changing, what's called a mandatory set-aside requirement.
Yeah.
And that applies when somebody comes in for a use variance and receives
Okay.
that use variance. And it's going to be 5 or more units. One of the units, 20%,
Mhm.
has to be affordable.
All right. Thanks.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up, sorry. Sorry. Fair share appendices on page 41. I just want to identify that we've made certain adjustments as you turn the page on page 42. We've made certain red line of changes, that there are certain amendments pending that will be supplemented. What I look to do if the board votes to approve this document tonight, and it's endorsed by the governing body tomorrow night, is to then codify a brand-new document with all these changes in it. This will be on the website, needs to be on the website for the township, as well as then, if board members are interested, I could send you a PDF of the document, as well as if you wanted a hard copy of it as well, so you can keep it in your records. But I just wanted to identify that. The last component I'll touch on for the housing element is the amended 2026 spending plan. This is really a document more for information of the planning board, but it's really a purview of the governing body because they control how money is spent. It goes through that proper agency of the government. So I just wanted you to know that we amended this document based on certain requirements from the Fair Housing Center. They wanted to see more affordability assistance than what we had obligated, but yet we will be obligating the funding. But what is also required is that we then work towards spending the funding, and that's something, Mayor, that I would ask you that we plan for future meetings to talk about how you would best like to do certain things, and then with consultation with the governing body to go forward with that. So that's really the overall amendments to the housing element fair share plan for this document. With that, I would turn it back to the board for any further questions. Mr. Chairman, what I would also offer is that subsequently, we ask for any public comments or questions, but then from there, I would ask the board to consider this for a vote to approve these amendments so that we can then follow up at the governing body level with endorsing the amendments to the housing element fair share plan, which then we would then submit to the program, the state program, in order for us to get immunity. And the purpose for immunity is to protect us and protect our zoning, so we have the ability to enforce our zoning instead of the alternative, which is, I can give you examples, unfortunately, that some municipalities have chosen not to, and I'm not saying this round or others, but they have lost control of their zoning. The court then takes over what they want to do and where they want to do it. So then it becomes almost open season on your zone plan. So I'm trying to give you the background of why it's so important to get this document done and approve it in some form. So thank you.
Okay. With that said, any questions from members of the board? We'll start with the board questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Mayor.
On the amended 2026 spending plan,
Mm-hmm.
after page 46,
Mm-hmm.
B, payment in lieu PIL. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Which page? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Page 2 after page 43.
Page 2, thank
Yeah.
you.
At the top, appendix B.
Oh, yes. This is one of those programs that the Fair Housing Act allows you to set up, which is accepting funding from a developer instead of constructing the developments on site. It's called a payment in lieu of program. It's something that we are no longer, as me, as a professional, recommending that municipalities seek, because otherwise you have to build them somewhere else. You have to then use your funding to build those units somewhere else. What's difficult about that is finding the land, finding the location, and effectively finding some other supplemental funding to build these units at that location. And then you're almost concentrating the units at one location, which sometimes is not necessarily the best thing to do. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I've done it in other municipalities in appropriate locations, it might make sense. But we're trying not to, because these numbers just get so hard to chase. It's hard to, find the actual projects in the end. So that's what that represents.
Okay.
Isn't part of that affordable housing trust spending plan, though, where, maybe I'm wrong, that you could compensate some of the landlord for some of the apartment, the differential with market
Certainly.
rate?
You can definitely do what's called an affordability assistance program, which is working through the firm that has been currently retained. It's called CGP&H.
Right.
They do your administrative agent work. And under that organization, they'll establish a program for rental units where you can subsidize the rents by buying down through a developer. If he's willing to deed restrict a certain number of units, you then get credit towards the number of units that they would be buying down. So you can use some of your trust fund monies towards that type of program. You then get credits towards your plan.
Is that still allowed?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's encouraged.
Go ahead.
Thanks for all this hard work, Ed. I appreciate all you do, really.
Thank you.
I always say the same thing. If I had said it last year as well, 6 of these properties on west of 287, that means we're gonna be going to Brooklawn and, the Hills High School as opposed to just one. Well, I don't know where Servo's gonna fit into this, so I'm guessing it's east of 287, so it puts it at the high, right up against Veterans Park. But, for the most part, like, that's a lot of units on the western part of town. That high school already has more than the high does, so, I mean, I know you did due diligence, I see all the ones you had in here that you didn't choose, and for obvious reasons, busing and location, I get it, so. 202s, and I need some, widen a little bit.
Yeah, that's something that
Like
as a planner, I get very frustrated with,
Mhm.
because you're feeling like you're losing control. You're losing local control over all this because of the state required mandate that's coming down. And so it's just very frustrating to be at the table and trying to find the best plan you can and being understanding of the impacts. When you tell the court that this is going to impact our schools, they say, okay, your next question.
care, right.
What's your next question? Or it'll impact traffic. They say, what's your next question?
Yeah, take the bus.
And they just don't consider
Yeah.
those provisions. And I find that very unfortunate because it puts the municipalities in very difficult positions.
Do you know, I know it's obviously very early, but do you know if the Embassy Suites is gonna be just knocked down or just renovated?
I was heard, at least during the early stages of this, that they were looking to renovate the
Okay.
structure. Because I'm saying to myself, how great would that building be with the atrium inside,
Yeah.
and having units built around it.
Again, thanks again for
I'm
all this.
hopeful that's the
Explaining
case.
everything, it's great.
Sure, certainly.
Okay, seeing no, Mr. Duddy?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. And I think I know the answer, but I just want to be very clear. So let's say third round obligation, 13, 14. Are we saying we have completed or met that obligation already, or?
What we're saying is that we've affirmatively addressed the 845 units that we were able to reduce the number down to. In addition to that, we've also affirmatively addressed some of the unmet need. Remember, the RDP, which is the 845, the remainder between 13, 14 and 845 is what's called the unmet need category. They still want you to do some level of zoning in the third round to address that need. What became a real wrestling match in this round, the fourth round, I'm sorry, this might sound too confusing, but what became a requirement that if we didn't, let's say we didn't address the whole 496 for the fourth round, there would be an unmet need component remaining of that. Let's say it's 100 units, just for discussion's sake. What's required in this fourth round is that you address 25% of that 100 units, or 25 units of that total amount. And then you have to implement affirmative zoning for that, even though those properties may not come to fruition. So there's even more of a hammer now to make sure you're addressing unmet
So
need.
when we say fourth round 496 includes 25% of
Yeah,
right?
don't
Oh, no,
look at
no.
the 25%. I'm sorry.
I'm
if I-
just-
It's probably going to cause more confusion than it's worth, but I realize that as soon as I open my mouth. But regardless, the 496, you're addressing your whole need. And
Okay,
that's
including the
that's what
previous
brought us-
unmet, yeah.
That's what brought us a lot of credibility with the Fair Share Housing Center and was able to get us to the final decision. Because they saw we were affirmatively addressing, we're not looking to skirt it. We saw there was a lot of developments that needed to have some reconsideration, and we addressed it, so.
Okay. And then one last, so under any project, when we say, hey, we have credits of 137, just as an example, does it mean that we are committing, and the builder has also committed to put 137 units aside under that project?
That's a good point, and it's probably helpful. Is there a specific program you're looking at or a
I'm
specific
just looking
project?
at Park, you know.
I'm gonna
page-
use an
page five,
example.
The first line item, page 5.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's an example that kind of helps me describe one other component that I might have just glanced over. Is that part of our plan also implements or utilizes what are called bonus credits.
Mm-hmm.
So if a development, for instance, if you can refer to page 7.
Yep.
And if you look at page 7, you see 4 Gate Hall, Toll Brothers.
Yep.
That's applying 36 credits. They're going to do 36 affordable units at that location. We're getting 18 bonuses. No units have to be built for those bonuses. So it's a total of 54 credits that we're able to get for that development because it's a redevelopment of an existing site.
All right, but we are only putting 36 aside units?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a
All right.
good question because it helps you understand how many units are we really putting on
Really
that
putting
site.
in, okay.
Right.
All right, so 496 really does not mean we are putting 496 units?
Correct.
If we
It's
take out the
minus
bonus piece,
124.
Okay, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we're putting together 372.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dinsmore?
Just an observation, and I don't know the answer to this. Is there any reason why if we develop, say, Embassy Suites, why those students couldn't go to the high rather than to the hills?
I believe the Board of Education would make decisions on placement of the
Absolutely,
children.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that if the hills is overcrowded and the high has some room, and you've got a single location that's actually relatively close to the high's
Yeah.
travel patterns.
Yeah, and my understanding is they already balance out between the two schools based on,
But that's not happening right now.
Hmm?
But that's not happening right now with the embassy.
okay. Any other questions from the board?
Sorry, one more thing, sorry. Mr.
Okay.
You didn't touch upon this one yet, did you?
No, I was going to do that after we vote
Okay.
for the House Council Threshold. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that said, I'll conclude the questions from the board, unless, no, okay. Open it up to any questions from the public.
One question.
Wait,
So-
sir, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Double Shah, Dhaval, last name Shah, Shah. I'm coming as a liaison from the Board of Education,
Okay, your address?
86 South Parliament Road.
Okay.
Question, so after Phase 4, what was signed off in December, have we met all the requirements for the affordable housing for the next 10 years?
That's what we're doing, and that would be true. What I'm also just going to preface that with is because we have to get the court's final sign-off on all the information we're submitting. So it's not just this housing element fair share plan, there's a lot of other reporting data that we have to submit as well. But we will get that immunity, and I feel very confident that we will get that immunity for this thing.
So once we get the immunity for the next 10 years, I know we still have office buildings, but necessarily, we don't need a housing for that. It could be any type of space, correct?
You don't need to, that is correct. But yet, what might have to be a balance is to consider whether or not what might be an alternative use. But of course, that becomes the governing body.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing nobody else from the public, I'll close that portion. Any final comments from the applicant? Oh, sorry, you're not the applicant, but yeah.
Thank you. No further comments. I would turn this back to the board for consideration for adoption of these amendments because it's your role as the planning board.
All right.
John?
Any deliberation before we?
Could I ask one additional question based on what Mr. Shah had said?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So we met 496, a complete obligation, we're good for 10 years. Any additional housing that, if and when it does come to Parsippany, it could be anything the governing body can decide. It is not, there has to be no component of affordable housing in there, or it could be entirely all affordable housing.
Yeah, I will clarify, though,
Okay.
that if you do approve on some unforeseen
Mm-hmm.
residential development to be rezoned for, you would have to include a 25% set aside, because you still have a remaining unmet need from the third round. So what's required of any agreement and court-approved settlement agreement is that you have to have what's called a mandatory set-aside ordinance. And so that states that if you are in the future going to add a new development that wasn't foreseen in this round, you still have an unmet need that you had said you didn't have enough vacant land for. So therefore, you have to affirmatively address and require them to have affordable housing. But if you did also address it with another, let's say, non-commercial to non-commercial, non-residential to non-residential use, then you have the ability to do so, and that doesn't incur a impact to your housing plan.
So it's only impact when it's from commercial to residential.
That's correct.
But isn't that it's part of our master plan that we state to 25% set aside for affordable
20%.
housing?
20%.
I mean,
20%.
20%.
Yes. And it's actually, that's why the housing element becomes part of your master
Right.
plan, but it's also in your existing code. It was
Right.
required.
Right.
It's required of all municipalities that had an unmet need, that they
Right.
adopt that ordinance.
Okay.
Just a question, so when they're figuring out the third round, fourth round, do they even talk about that? Is that even considered?
I can't
Okay.
venture to say that
All
that's
right.
considered, only because there's such issues I have with the overall calculation of the need.
Yeah.
But I'll just leave that as, I'll
Okay.
try not to give my own personal opinion.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion or deliberations about the amendments? Opening up for discussion among the board members?
The amendment's just filling in the tweaks that you just went over? That's all they do?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is an already approved package. It's just, dotting the Ts and crossing the Is, cross-outs, and the additions that we see in the red.
Yes.
That's all we're approving at this point.
Correct. And what I testified to.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anybody speaking up, so I'll accept the motion at this point.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Mealy.
a motion to approve the amendments to the housing element and fair share plan, and I believe also the amendments to the ordinance.
No, we're just,
No,
not as a
No,
Mealy.
let me
that
just,
is not
yeah.
included, okay.
Yeah, there's, Ed didn't go over this, but there's a very unique steps we have to take here, so we have to adopt the plan, and then Ed is back on center stage to talk briefly about the tweaks, I'm gonna use Mr. Dinsmore's word, to the ordinances. So it's just the plan, Mr. Mealy, for now.
Thank you.
Second, Dadich.
Okay, Nora, please call the roll.
Dedich,
Yes.
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Desai,
Yes.
DePiero,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Neely,
Yes,
Napolitano,
Yes.
Patel,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Okay. That order of business is done. First vote of the first of our new year, so congratulations, everyone. Let's move on to our ordinance amendment. Mr. Snikis, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Back to you.
It's been worse than that, trust me.
Okay. I have one of those last names too, so I get it.
Right. But thank you, members of the board, Mayor. What we have tonight is, as well, several ordinances, and I believe there's a total of 8 that have been referred to the planning board for consideration. And as I mentioned a moment ago, is that now that we've adopted the amendments to the Housing Element Fair Share Plan, in accordance with the municipal land use law, any ordinances that are affecting your land use code need to be sent to the planning board for review for what's called consistency review with the master plan. And that's so that things aren't being done on one level that don't get informed by the other level of government. And so what we're dealing with now is these ordinances are now all a product of the housing element fair share plan, and as well as the mediation agreement that was mentioned a moment ago, so that we have the ability to implement the zoning that's part of the housing element fair share plan. 7 of the 8 are the zoning to effectuate those properties that we had talked about, including the overlay zone. What's not part of this is that we don't have to amend the actual ordinance for the Park Lanadex project. And the reason for that is there was a redevelopment plan that was adopted that effectively rezoned and established the zoning for that parcel. So that's why that's not an amendment tonight. So essentially, for the record, it's the AHD-MU2 zone, the AHD 8 affordable zone, the AHD 9, 10, 11, and 12 zones, and then the last is the OVL-8A, which is the 7 Century Drive overlay zone. So those 7 zones with their criteria are what is being implemented in accordance with the concept plans and the housing element fair share plan outlined as a result of the mediation agreement. The last one, number 8, that you should have in front of you, is an ordinance that talks about amending the general affordable housing ordinances. And this ordinance, which is rather lengthy, the reason why it's so lengthy is that it spells out all the various administrative requirements associated with administering affordable units, also administering reporting of units that need to be reported yearly to the governing body, what the municipal liaison is supposed to do. I'm sort of smiling to your board member who is the municipal liaison, that'd be Jennifer Smith. And then also, in addition to that, what the administrative agent is supposed to be doing for the municipality. This is a requirement to be updated because there have been certain changes to the Fair Housing Act from 2024. In addition to that, you remember me mentioning UHAC, the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. They are also being amended just recently. So this document looks to address those changes as well. So we've made those changes so that this is all up to date and now going to be implemented in accordance with the Housing Element Fair Share Plan. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, as a professional planner advising the board in accordance with the municipal land use law, I find that these would not be inconsistent with the actual recent housing element that this board tonight just voted on and implemented. The reason why is because of those changes and what was required by the mediation agreement for this zone.
All right, so as I understand it, 7 of these ordinances apply as the overlay zones for the properties that, this is basically required for us to move forward with those
Only
properties.
one of them is an overlay zone.
Oh, okay.
The others are the actual affirmative zoning for those parcels. If you remember, there were 7 properties that were part of the June plan. Those 7 properties are part of, 6 of these ordinances address 7 of those parcels that were required to be part of the plan to address the 496 units. So we had to affirmatively address each and every one of those.
Okay.
So that one overlay, the new 7 Century Drive, that was the one that is new here.
Okay.
Part of that. So the last one would be.
So these set the guidelines for how the building plans will be.
Correct. And the ordinances by which they have to follow.
That's number 14.
Ed, can you, for the board members, just let them know which one is the overlay?
Certainly. That one was, it calls out at the top of the heading as OVL-8A.
No, I know
Which ordinance number?
I know the ones
Oh,
that
I don't
we
know the ordinance numbers, I'm sorry.
I have the ones that
copy.
we received from council,
I
because
see.
we refer
Okay.
to here.
Yes.
14,
So the
towards the back.
Is that number 14?
Yeah.
You think?
the one for,
The left side.
7 Century?
7th Century, that's 2026-14, that's the very
That should be
last.
14.
Page to the back.
Okay, got it. So we'll be getting
some adjustments to that.
that tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be testifying to that tomorrow.
Okay, and that's 8.
That's 8A.
It says 8.
That's what some of the, you'll see some of the typos were related to. That has to be 8A. The reason being is that I didn't realize at the time that the OVL 8 is your warehousing overlay that was implemented years ago.
Right.
That is not being moved forward, so I had to catch that at the last minute in the flurry of trying to do all this in time. So I apologize for that confusion.
Okay, and the other ordinance, which is in the front of our packet, are those general affordable housing ordinances that you were referring to. So these would be adjustments to our affordable housing.
Administrative requirements is the way I like to
Oh,
refer to it.
Right.
Got it.
The thing I get worried with this is just putting us into a corner where we lose some flexibility when the plans come to us. So without having a lot of time to review these, I guess I'll ask general questions, I'm trying to think of how to phrase the questions, but effectively, what kind of changes are we looking at here versus our existing laws?
Yeah, what sort of changes you're looking at is that we had to implement certain setback density coverage requirements, but I will recognize that many of them are probably asking for a little bit more green space than a lot of the existing non-residential uses had on them.
Okay.
So you may see even stormwater management improve as a result of that, in accordance to, especially with the new DEP rules, where they're requiring more green infrastructure to be implemented. In addition to that, you still have the ability to seek to grant variances, C variances, from these requirements if you find that there's a better alternative. And that's always a case when somebody can come to you and make certain adjustments, because try not to defend developers too much here. But what they may have done things in a shotgun approach and then all of a sudden realize, you know what, I need to adjust certain things to make certain improvements.
Yeah.
And then you have the board's ability to vary that as a result.
I guess the problem is though, if they're in, for those areas where maybe they're working in a different direction, for one reason or another, there's a lot here to go over, and we just got it today.
That's, I'm sorry if you just got it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my fault.
But,
Sorry, Nora.
yeah, I'm just worried that all of a sudden the developers say, well, that's your ordinance, no variance is required, and now we lose that ability to make decisions here.
Yeah.
Well, let me just piggyback on what Ed was just saying. You don't necessarily lose your authority as a planning board, right? What is happening here is that just like when the town zones certain areas, they set a zone, they say, okay, this is the R1 zone. In the R1 zone, the average lot size is 10,000 square feet. And then they say, okay, well then this section is going to be R2, and the average lot size there is 5,000 square feet. So there are properties that are going to fall within that, and there are properties that are not going to fall within that. So then when somebody seeks to develop one of those properties, they're going to have to come either here, depending on the jurisdiction, either here or to the zoning board to obtain relief. What this does is actually, if you want to look at it this way, it actually places them under your jurisdiction because they're coming here to get relief. They would not be going to the zoning board because they've gotten the use that they're seeking here, whether it's an overlay. And just, for everyone's purposes, if you're new, an overlay is simply saying there is a zone applicable, whatever that zone is, let's say warehouse, but on top of that zone, an overlay, literally an overlay is this other type of zoning. So you could do it, but you could also do the other one. It's kind of an either or. But when we're talking about the affirmative changes, the ones that Ed's been talking about, where it says, okay, this is allowed residential, this is allowed at a certain density, that doesn't mean the process ends there. That developer, you pick whichever one, would still have to make an application for a site plan, at least a site plan approval. They would be here. They may have variances, even if they're in a redevelopment plan. We just call them deviations instead because that's what we say. I don't know why, but it's the same. It's a variance, right? So regardless, you're not really losing, just to go to the chairman's point, you're not necessarily losing jurisdiction or losing your ability to oversee these. what's happening is that there's this external force known as this affordable housing obligation that is really, you're not the one that's actually being affected, it's really the mayor and municipal council, because they're the ones who are being told, well, you really can't make you have to make these decisions within these parameters. So just to go to, once again, to the chairman's point, you are going to see these, if they do develop, they are going to come before you. And at that point, you will have the ability to at least do a site plan review and depending if they need variances. So these are not somehow going to be rubber stamped in any way, shape, or form. Am I correct, Ed?
You're very correct. And in fact, I'll add to that, as you had mentioned, some of the frustration for the council was they had to work within certain parameters and what's called not cost generative features. So for instance, we would love to see 50-foot buffers, let's say, for something a little bit out of the norm. Whereas the court and the adjudicator would say, no, 25 feet's enough. That's really not as far as you can go. So it didn't come through the normal channels of, let's say, this board saying, we'd like to see housing over here, and we'd like to then formulate the zone and maybe put in 50-foot buffers. That's not the case when you're dealing with affordable housing. You have to deal with certain limited ability to adjust the rules, because they know you have this constitutional obligation that comes first. Well, maybe the environmental criteria comes first, but then you have this constitutional obligation, and you're going to allow this zoning and tell me why it's not reasonable.
Okay.
So that's how it comes about,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
just reading through some of these quickly, I'm not that concerned with what I'm reading so far. But I am seeing a lot here with has to do with income and other questions. I guess my question related to those is, are these in any way going to encourage or discourage smaller unit developments instead of these large-scale developments?
It's interesting. I'm not sure what framework you're saying that under, but yet they will be coming to you with their proposals. Typically, the market drives what they would propose to you. And in some situations, when you're thinking of this just in a general term, they do have minimum requirements required for the affordable units. They have to be integrated. Certain types of units have to be integrated. They also have to receive certain types of improvements, as well as access to all of the amenities within the development. But the market rate units are really up to the developer themselves, as far as the size of the units and things of that nature.
Yeah.
That becomes somewhat market driven, obviously, because they want to work within the market parameters. What I found interesting in this process was, even though it's 496 units, a lot of these were townhouses. There's, interesting to me, I'm saying, why are they now becoming townhouses instead of multifamily developments?
So
It's probably because of the market.
So when you
They're
say
finding that
townhouses, does that mean they'll fall under an apartment structure or a condo structure?
It could be either for sale or for rent.
Okay.
We
Right.
can't be sure of that, but at the same time, what I'm seeing is that because they're townhouses, it's a different type of unit structure. You're owning to the sky, in a sense, in a townhouse.
Yeah.
Compared to a market rate unit where it might be flat units.
I've had the opportunity to live in a townhouse, so yeah.
That's what your deed says, you know? So
Right.
that's where, in this instance, I'm seeing that they're trying to address at least more diversity in the marketplace. So that helps with some of that, I would say.
And by the way, board members, I'm sorry I'm taking over a little bit right now, but my last question is, I'm seeing that our rental units are now occupying about 40% of our total units in town, and that feels high to me.
Right.
And I know affordable housing kind of drives more in that direction, but is there anything in here that would encourage ownership units instead of rental
We
units?
couldn't go there. We couldn't regulate the ownership type.
Okay.
The only time we could have done that back in the third round was saying, okay, you're going to do rental units, we get certain bonuses for that. That was no longer the case in this round. Instead, they gave you bonuses for the redevelopment of sites. They
All right.
recognized that municipalities are being somewhat burdened by that, so they gave you the bonus credits for that.
Yeah. Is it okay if I ask your opinion, is 40% rental units high for a community?
It's on the higher end, yeah.
Yeah.
But recognize too that a lot of that, it might be senior units too. I know you have
We do.
Brookside and things like that, and Baldwin Oaks, I think is another one. Those two developments are seniors, so as I know, my in-laws are in their 80s and 90s, they've moved into an apartment because it's much easier for them to deal with than a house. So those units tended to become an asset for the communities.
Sure. All right. And Ed, you know, going to the rental issue, that's also market driven, right? That's ultimately a question for the developer.
Especially as we're looking at the third and fourth round, the number of units. I'm like saying to myself, Parsippany being the prime market, it looks like it's trying to adjust itself towards ownership, at least.
All right.
So,
Mr. Dedich?
Yep, quick question. So, when you were discussing about townhouses versus apartments, so in these calculations, was there a different kind of calculation? Like 496, was it
No,
1-to-1, doesn't matter?
Not for the fourth round, they took away the rental bonus credit. So therefore, you can only get credit for certain types of development you were doing. And so because a lot of this was redevelopment, I know it's a big ask, and we talk about impact to schools and regional impacts as well, but at the same time, it gave you those bonuses to do so.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Another question.
Yeah.
If some developer wanted to come in and put in, say, 10 apartments for veterans only, what would that do to the calculation to?
Veterans, you can do a veterans preference for some of these units. There is a certain percentage you can do. I can't recite it right offhand.
Okay.
But you can do veterans units for some of these developments, and that could be a consideration.
Okay, what about a senior,
Senior
assisted
component gets restricted. There's a certain percentage, 25%. You can't be more than 25% of your 496. But none of these developers wanted to do senior or have that obligation.
Okay.
So we couldn't incite that requirement because there were all available sites, and at that point, you didn't have an option.
Okay, but if somebody did want to do it.
Oh, if you
crazy
did want to
enough-
do it, sure, you could do it. But
Okay.
just make sure you don't do more than 25% of your unmet need. That's really what I would do.
Okay.
Work backwards.
Okay.
Don't we have one coming in on?
You probably have from the, from the third round, we do have,
Right.
there is an assisted living facility that was approved at the former GlaxoSmithKline
Right.
location,
Yeah,
but their
that's your-
site plan was not
Your meeting.
not officially approved, so they will be coming back to this board. But they did get approval, preliminary approval for that location, but they didn't get final, so they probably would come back to you. I did get interest in that property, but I'm waiting for where that's at. So that would be
Yeah,
something.
they're building the 55 and older right now, and then the blank area with the big mountain of dirt is supposed to be the
That's
assisted
the
living, but they've
assisted
never
living.
come back. That was like, oh my God, it was probably my first year on here.
They
That was
should
years
come
ago.
back to you.
Yeah,
That's the property with the big tree, I think.
Yes.
big tree and a big mountain.
We kept that big tree, didn't we?
Yes.
We did.
Could you help me understand on the first page of this report, the fifth whereas, 66 Glen Ave LLC having filed challenges pursuant?
Which one? Sorry.
The very first page of the
Very
ordinance.
first page.
What does 66 Glen Ave
That has
LLC having
nothing
to
to
do
do
with our
with
town
you.
though? Did they challenge our towns?
No,
No,
I
they did not.
think Ed has.
That must have been a
Ed-
typo.
Yeah, Ed's got,
All right.
Was that on
Ed-
the affordable housing ordinance? Can I
Ed,
approach?
it's the
The first
first
page.
page of this one, Ed, right here.
Thanks for picking that up.
We don't have a
We did not
66
challenge
Glen
us.
Ave.
Who challenged you was, I was using some formatted documents to work through this.
Mhm.
Who challenged us was 7th Century. That should have been 2nd Century.
Okay.
You'll also see a note a little lower.
They, we're up Morse. I looked it up, they challenged Glen Rock.
My apologies.
66 Glen Ave.
I represent-
Yeah, I figured that. I looked it up, I'm like, we don't have a 66, and then right to Glen Rock I went, so.
Ed and Mr. Burgess are very popular
I noticed
planners.
this.
I need a
have-
vacation.
yeah.
A long one.
2035, you can get a vacation. From this
A long
summer,
one.
right?
Oh, my God.
All right. I believe Mr. Dinsmore has a question.
I just have one question. It really doesn't pertain to what we're doing here tonight, but it pertains to what we might be doing some other night. Has the legislature or any possible legislation come forward that might increase the, not increase, but change the way that we zone for multifamily homes on single-home residential lots?
There's discussion about accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
Yeah, ADUs.
Yeah, that's still a bill that's being considered. There's a lot of objections to that, I would say, including the League of Municipalities. They're very concerned about what that means, because across the board, if you approve something like that, at least this is my opinion, this is only my professional opinion, is that there's a lot of nuances involved when you do accessory units. The property size, impact the neighbors, things like that. And in the original bill, a lot of that was pushed aside. And I'm saying to myself, do you really want to do that? Don't you want to consider certain rights of the neighboring property owner to the single-family home that wants to rent out maybe an accessory dwelling unit in the back of their home? So I thought the broad brush of the bill was so wide, was so open, let's say, not enough qualifying criteria in there, that I think it was problematic, in my opinion, of why it may not move forward. But yes, there is bills being considered for that. Also, another bill that's also potentially affecting affordable housing or multifamily development is considerations for adjustments to the, what's called the Residential Site Improvement Standards, the RSIS. You may hear that acronym a lot as board members hearing housing developments, is that the state established many decades ago residential site improvement requirements for parking. And what's being considered is certain adjustments to those ratios because of their proximity to transit routes, and even transit routes such as bus stops, so that that entire corridor for that bus stop would allow a certain exemption from certain requirements of parking. What I feel is not being considered in that big picture, yes, it's good to encourage mass transit, but what's not being considered is the suburban quality of some of the communities and how people need to have another car, or a car to begin with, to access their place of work, or to get goods and services from food stores, things of that nature. So I would implore you to pay attention to that regulation as well, to make sure it's obviously being considered with the impacts to a place like Parsippany-Troy Hills.
Yeah, you can get to New York City with mass transit, but not many other places.
That's my point. But then people are always saying, well, what about rideshare? And I'm saying to myself, not everybody relies on that. People need cars, and they need access to have that. So that's another discussion for another day.
Okay.
The other thing, I forgot, we added in 2019 the affordable accessory apartments in the R1.
Yes,
So
that
we
was something
did,
of a
we
deal.
did add that in 2019, and not one person applied. So we did create it, we put it there, we allowed people, and nobody applied. So,
How many housing units do we have in R1s, actually?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my
It's
head.
a fair number.
Yeah,
there's
there's
enough area.
R1s.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Don't even know what's on it.
But it's also your old Powder Mill section, and Powder Mill, it's the larger properties. You know, they're not trying to put them on small 6,000 square foot lots, they're on large lots that allow it, so.
The reason why we did it is because of the larger lots.
The larger
And
lots.
better area for setbacks, coverage factors. Because coverage factors were actually considered to be exempt as well under that bill.
Really?
And that bill has been tabled, but not sure where it's going to go.
I mean, it's, to me, I don't object to ADUs, I don't object to multifamily homes, as long as the buffers and the other bulk requirements for a residential home are maintained.
Because we've seen what's involved in the trenches, why you require it.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Patel.
Okay, so this 40% rental, is it state mandated or is it requirement? Is it just for Parsippany because we're a prime location, or is it across the
I
state?
think what was cited was, in fact, what our ratio is right now, what your percentage of
So half
rentals.
is what it is, that's what the split is. in
And then,
Parsippany.
so as you're now approving more potential rental properties, are you upsetting that factor even further? The idea being, and I don't want to sound any negative in this regard, rental has its purpose, but I believe there's a concern about transient populations, things of that nature, and trying to maintain a balance between people who have an actual vested interest in their town and others that may not.
And it may not apply to other township, correct?
No, I'm not saying it's a regulation. It's
Okay.
not a regulation. It's really just an analysis of that percentage.
Other board members? Seeing none? All right, any questions from the public? Oh, sorry.
Why don't you just state, spell your name?
Double Shah, DHA-VAL, last name Shah, SHAH, 86 South Parliament Road. To confirm and reconfirm, 496, meaning 372 units will be townhouses?
No, they're not all going to be townhouses. Some may be multifamily.
Some may be, okay. Do we have a required split, in terms of, like,
We have it based upon the uses that are permitted in certain zones.
Mhm.
We permit townhouses, for instance.
okay,
In other zones, we permit multifamily. And in some zones, we permit mixed use,
okay,
which is allowing commercial with the multifamily development.
okay. So let's say these were like condos, and 40% of the affordable units were like studio apartments. Is there some regulation like that, or?
There is a regulation that requires that 20% of all the affordable units within a development have to be 3-bedroom. Then there's a requirement that a maximum of 20% can be 1-bedroom. The remainder can be 2-bedroom.
Can you get the breakdown again?
Wait, just to be clear, what Ed is talking about is within we'll use the 20% set aside as a
Within that
concept.
20%.
Yeah.
So if you have a 100-unit building,
Mm-hmm.
20 of those units are affordable, and they're supposed to be spread out interchangeably in the development.
Exactly.
Right? There's no way you should be able to tell that those 20 are affordable units. Okay? But within the 20, and this is what Ed's talking about, there is a breakdown both for bedrooms and for income verification. So there's really two. So Ed, I just want to make sure that everybody was understood that what you're talking about is the breakdown of the 20%.
Yeah.
Right.
So the 20 can be anywhere from studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom.
Well, this is what Ed's going to explain to you.
They anticipated having just a lot of small units.
Yes.
Instead of having what they call family units.
Yes.
And so what's required is that of the 20%, 4 of them, meaning 20% of the 20, can be 3 bedrooms, or have to be minimally 3 bedrooms. No more than 4 can be 1 bedroom. And then the remaining 2
Remaining are 2.
is 2 bedrooms.
So,
Does studio count as a
Right.
one-bedroom?
no.
No, you can have, studio is a 1-bedroom. Studio or 1-bedroom.
Studio, 1-bedroom, same thing.
Same thing.
Okay.
I mean, if that's the workers thing, then I need to figure out how many kids.
I don't know who said that.
Right, so, and then, right, the concept there, and once again, we'll probably say this more eloquently than I can, but the concept there of the 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom breakdown is that you have different levels of
Income.
affordability,
Yes.
income, and they also need to give opportunity to families versus single people, because if all you do are 1-bedroom units, that's going to be single or couples, whereas
Yeah.
a 3-bedroom is supposed to incentivize
Family.
a family. And obviously, they have to all meet income verification and be, within there's a certain number that has to be high, low income, middle, low income, and low income.
Moderate, low, and very low.
Very low, there you go. I knew Ed would know the words. So, there's a greater breakdown within that. And once again, and I want to clear up, I know that we're using these terms, townhouse versus, I'll use the British term, a flat, okay? The difference here, a townhouse is theoretically is a vertical
From ground to
structure.
sky. Ground to sky.
Right. Technically, that's a townhouse, whereas a flat is a flat. You could have a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom flat, and you could have a 2-bedroom townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just saying that in terms of not getting too deep into the concept of a townhouse versus a flat, and also because a townhouse and a flat both can be condoed, both can be ownership, both can be rental. So it's just realistically, when you think about it, it's just looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking at it? Is it a 7-story flat across, or a whole bunch of homes in a row.
Yeah.
That's really the only difference. And, so it's not, so you shouldn't necessarily focus, and part of this is you don't really focus on the ownership versus rental issue, you're just focusing on the set aside.
Thank you,
Okay.
Joe. It probably helps to clear that up. I appreciate that. Also, just one last thing. I know I don't want to add more confusion, but it's important that you know this, is that we have permitted townhouses, but also, we also permit stacked townhouse. Now,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a new fancy phrase that
Yes.
allows 1/1, but
Or
just like two
interchange.
units
Yeah.
next on top of each other. So that's a stacked townhouse. So you'll see that definition in one of the codes.
Can you repeat that last section again?
Yeah, it's called a stacked townhouse.
Okay.
And that would be where you would have townhouses, which are side by side.
Yep.
But then one of the last units could be a stacked 1/1.
Got it. Okay.
In that situation.
Okay.
And that's to allow some of the affordable units.
Understood.
Flexible, because these are units that are, I'm trying not to give too much deference to developers, but in order to afford the affordable units, they do need to do certain things to make them work, especially when they're trying to meet certain bedroom requirements, as just talked about.
Okay.
Okay, we were in the public portion, so any other members of the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Any last comments, Mr. Snakis?
No, that's what I have. I'll just ask the board to opine, really, that's by resolution, to the governing body as to whether or not you found the ordinance is consistent or inconsistent.
Okay. Any deliberation from the board? All right. Well, and with that said, I'll accept a motion regarding, Mr. Snakis, could you repeat?
Yeah, it would
what we need
be,
a motion?
Mr. Wenzel, I believe that's a resolution.
Right, so this would be a resolution, but because the council is meeting tomorrow, you're going to authorize me to send a very quick letter tonight to the municipal clerk. It's the beauty of email. Send a quick email to the clerk tonight that you all met, you had reviewed the ordinances, you reviewed the amended fair share housing plan. And remember that thing you just approved? Mr. Mealy got ahead of us and wanted to approve everything all at once, in very Soviet-like fashion, but one step at a time. So so now that you're finding consistency with the plan and that the ordinances are consistent with the plan. And there was a whole bunch of lawyer talk for saying you think these are appropriate in light of Ed's recommendations.
Okay, so with that said, I will accept the motion
Mr.
to
Chairman,
approve or disapprove. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Didich.
motion to approve the amendments to the general affordable housing ordinance so that they are not inconsistent with the master plan.
Very good. Nora, please call the roll.
Wait, we need a second.
Oh,
Second.
yes, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Napolitano.
All right. Nora, go ahead.
Didich,
Yes.
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Desai,
Yes.
DePiero,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Mealy,
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Patel,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Okay. Looks like that concludes our agenda for the evening. Motion to close the meeting?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting is closed for the evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Haven't had a meeting in 4 years.
How's it feel?
Not much.
Okay.
Saturday when we